A drone strikes Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's vacation home in Israel after the IDF martyred Hamas's political and military leader Yaya Sinwar in Gaza. The genocide operations continue in Gaza and in Lebanon while Netanyahu declares, quote, "Nothing will deter us." This insanity continues. Let's talk.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is the ongoing U.S.-backed genocide in Gaza and the precipice of World War III. My guest for this episode is an award-winning broadcaster and journalist who is based in Beirut, Lebanon, my dear brother, Laith Marouf. As always, man, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Wilmer.
And let me say, and Laith, I finally got this right, for further coverage, analysis, and interviews on this issue from the region on the ground, go to FreePalestine.Video. FreePalestine.Video is where you go to see Laith in action. Did I get that right, Laith?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Finally. So let's start with the first event. Al Jazeera and other sources have confirmed that Israel's IDF has killed Hamas's political and military leader Yaya Sinwar in Gaza. He was martyred a few days ago. Laith Marouf, talk about the significance. First of all, explain to the audience, because you and many others compare him to Che Guevara, for example. Who was Yaya Sinwar and his significance?
Well, his significance is that he was imprisoned for a long time by the Zionists, over 20 years. He had a 400-year actual judgment on him. And during his time in the prisons, worked with Palestinian prisoners from all factions and built what we know as the kind of the movement for prisoner rights inside occupied Palestine. And eventually he was released in a exchange deal between the Zionists and Hamas after Hamas had captured Israeli soldiers decades ago. And now, of course, he, his experience in this jail and the fact that he only secured his freedom through a prisoner exchange, he vowed that he will always be there to defend the rights of the Palestinian prisoners, which Palestinians view as living martyrs, those who are paying the highest price for the liberation of Palestine, more even so than those who are lucky enough to get martyred on the path. So we know that Yahya Sinwar planned October 7th and the capture of Israeli soldiers in order to secure the freedom of the thousands of Palestinians that are languishing in Israeli dungeons. And ultimately, he fought to the last moment for the freedom of those Palestinian prisoners. He was, of course, maligned and libeled and slandered by the Zionists, who claimed that he was hiding underground, or he had Zionist prisoners shackled around him to keep him protected, or that He was even not even in the country. What we found out is that he was on the ground, on the front line, with his soldiers, fighting Israeli invaders for a whole year. And now we have a record of actually his last moments because of the stupidity of the supremacist mind, the Zionist mind, who released the video of his last moments. Many of our viewers probably saw this video, and what it showed is that he fought, and according to the Israeli military, we know now the details, is that he, by accident, while Israeli military is invading the area in Gaza, they were confronted by this fighting group that he was leading, and he eventually, killed 2 Israeli soldiers himself, and that they, fired tank shells into the house that he was in with his fighting group, and he lost a hand. He got up and sat down on a chair, on a couch, and they sent in a drone to kill him, and he threw a stick with his good hand on this drone. This is the video. And eventually they had to fire another tank shell on the house to kill him. So this is the most glorious, most heroic death of any rebel leader we've seen in modern history, actually. It's more, I think, historic and heroic than even Che Guevara's death, who got captured and then assassinated in a shooting squad. This man fought to the last moment, and now his image of his last moments are going to be iconic. I believe in the Arabic or Muslim community and civilization, he will be on the same level as something like Hussein, where he fought to the last moment against an imperial horde by himself and a few of his fighters. This is going to be a moment in human history that will always be remembered.
In my talking to you about this over the last few days, and in my talking to you about this whole issue over the years, you use the term martyr. And I don't think that most in the West, they know the word, but I don't think they understand the significance of that description and what it means to those in the region. I don't know if that's because of the difference between the Christian Bible and the Holy Quran, and so if you could just take a minute or so and explain, when you say that you referred to some of the prisoners as living martyrs, you referred to Yaya Sinwar as a martyr. If you could elaborate on that, please. Does that question even make sense?
Oh, yes, it does make sense. Look, many cultures, number one, use the word martyr, and not in even sometimes in a religious context. The dictionary meaning of it is to die for a just cause, fighting for a just cause. And the Soviet communists were calling their dead martyrs when they were fighting the Nazis. The French revolutionaries called their dead during the revolution martyrs, even though they were secular. Obviously, in the Christian context of, although all the saints that died spreading Christianity were called martyrs, in Islam, the word shaheed, I think, carries even more connotations because how Arabic is based on roots of words. And shaheed, the word for martyr in Arabic, comes from the same root as shahada, he witnessed. And a shaheed is an eternal witness to reality of their injustice that they fought. This is how deep the connotation carries. And they are also the ones giving the testimony to God about this injustice when they are in Islam. A martyr is in the highest levels of heaven, where the Creator and prophets are.
The death of Yahya Sinwar, according to Joe Biden, is the opportunity for a day after. Those are his words, in Gaza. That Biden now believes that there can now be a political settlement of the war, a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. This is what Biden said upon learning upon the martyrdom of Sinwar, and that this was that Sinwar was an insurmountable obstacle to achieving the goals of a peaceful settlement, and now the obstacle no longer exists. Two things. One, your thoughts on those statements by Joe Biden, and then two, saying that he was the insurmountable obstacle, assigning that to him as an individual, to me, demonstrates Joe Biden and the administration, they don't really understand. This is not the politics of personality. This is the politics of persecution.
Yes, and look, on the one hand, it shows you how much they feared him as an opponent. Okay, for them to say he was an insurmountable obstacle, that's so on the one hand they wanted to blame him for everything, but on the other hand they revealed actually how little the empire is in the face of a warrior like Sinwar, who has principles that stands for them, and is rather die than accept injustice. You see, we have power in us. Most people think that the empire is the one that is insurmountable, but in reality, no. If people stand for their principles and work for them, the empire could collapse. A man like Sinwar can bring the whole empire of white supremacy to its knees and force it to reveal itself as the wildest beast on this planet. After 100 years of the West attempting to erase the memory of its depravities, of its crimes on this planet, and the genocides of the Americas and Africas and so on, and rebirth itself as the epitome of human rights and international law, the West revealed itself as the wild beast. And that is Sinwar's achievement on October 7th. All of humanity, all of those justice-loving people on this planet should thank him for what he did on October 7th that led us to this moment, and should value his martyrdom as the highest in our age. One last thing about this vegetable emperor. His words were copy-paste from all the leaders of the West. You saw the same goddamn ridiculous name-calling and boasting of saying that they are going to now do what they want. They're going to now create a new Gaza as they wish, or as Netanyahu has been saying, he wants to create a new Middle East, right? And the reality is that this is delusional hubris, because the fight's not over, and Yahya Sinwar left behind him a whole people that have been standing with the resistance for a year under genocide. And this reminds me, they told us that Yahya Sinwar is under the ground or away, and that a lot of people want him killed and captured, and a lot of Palestinians would would actually rat him out to get the Israelis to kill him. A whole year of bribes to the Palestinian people. This man was walking amongst them, and not one Palestinian in Gaza ratted him out. They think, the Zionists and the imperialists, that the whole world is like them, can be bought and sold, can rat out their heroes. The Palestinian people are not that. And today we saw with this martyrdom of Yahya Sinwar, who is a hero and who is a zero.
I'm going to try to draw a comparison, and if I'm off base, I mean no insult. I was in Iran during in February. I want to say it was probably 2017, and they brought me to there for the celebration of the Iranian Revolution, and I was standing on a corner in Tehran, and General Soleimani walked past. I mean, walked right past me. And I don't even have words to describe the reaction of the crowd as he walked past. I didn't even know who he was, but everybody just gushed with love. And I turned to my interpreter. I said, Ali, who is that? He almost couldn't speak. It was, that's General Soleimani. That's General Soleimani, our most beloved general. And I reached down to pick up my camera to take a picture of him. And when I came up with the lens, he was gone. And I said, Ali, where'd he go? And Ali turned to me and he said, they call him the ghost. That's what he does. He disappears like a ghost. I was like, who? No insult, sir. Like it was like Michael Jackson walking by.
Oh yeah.
Is it unfair to either individual to compare the two in terms of how beloved they were in their respective cultures and countries?
Michael Jackson, obviously.
Oh no! Don't no! I just in terms of
I just want to say this.
Okay.
I just want to say this before I tell you my answer. Obviously, was hated by the Zionists, and they wanted his head. And remember his song, "Black or White."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to diss him when I'm saying this, but clearly the only people that get this attention in the West are popular culture icons, music, whatever it is. And at least in the old days, there was some musicians that are worthy of that, that had political liberationist stances. But today, you look at the only possible reaction you see like this is for athletes or musicians in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe Sponge Pants Bob or whatever. I don't know what his name was.
SpongeBob
SquarePants, whatever. You see like this. It's this is the only things that have that respect in the West, and we have heroes. And the only thing that makes these people heroes is that they are fighting for a just cause under these insurmountable odds.
Mm-hmm.
And they are succeeding, and they're keeping their faith, they're keeping their pride, they're refusing to give up on the principles under these conditions, and they're giving a modern example for people to emulate in terms of fighting oppression.
So was my comparison between Soleimani and Sinwar, is that a fair comparison to make?
Oh yes, okay. Of course. He was responsible for running all the military units in Gaza, and he planned and succeeded in October 7th like no other rebellion has succeeded in modern times.
What does it say to you, as we listen to the rhetoric from the West, as they talk about, in fact, let me quickly pull up my so now apparently they're dispatching Tony Blinken back to the region. Kamala Harris says that Sinwar's death, quote, gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. Biden now says now's the time to move towards a ceasefire. He's dispatching Blinken, but they assassinate the negotiators. They assassinate the leadership. They assassinate the folks who, for example, they assassinated, martyred Hassan Nasrallah, who was considered by many to be a reasonable negotiator, somebody who was, I don't know if the term moderate is the right word, but a reasonable negotiator. Soleimani was martyred in Iraq on a peace mission, trying to broker, I believe, a peace deal between the Saudis and the Iranians. The brother that was assassinated,
Ismail Haniyeh,
excuse me, the negotiator. He was responsible for the political side, not the military side of Hezbollah.
Hamas.
So Hamas. Thank you. So they talk about peace deals, they talk about negotiations, but they assassinate the folks that are responsible for engaging in that dialogue.
Oh yes. There's no safety with the empire, and I mean we have a record of hundreds of years of negotiations of indigenous nations with the United States, and all the broken promises, and every time a leader comes and gets assassinated while he's signing a deal, even was back as far back as the 1700s. So this is not out of the ordinary. This is actually the norm for American behavior. But again, supremacy is blinding them. Mm-hmm. They think that they can come right now and impose whatever deal they want to, either on Lebanon or on the Palestinians in Gaza, and that is not going to happen. They're at this moment, Hezbollah began a new stage, and they announced it as a new stage of the war, asked people to start watching, looking what's happening, and they're acting and committing over 40 operations a day now, of waves of missiles, waves of drones, and we can obviously talk about that attempted quote-unquote assassination, yes, of Netanyahu, but just those waves of missiles and drones are the largest ever conducted by Hezbollah, and much of the north of the Zionist colony is destroyed. So where is the stopping? How are they going to stop it if they don't hand over all the Palestinian prisoners of war? And as we see, they're continuing the genocide in North Gaza as this Israeli former officer, Hochstein, arrives here in Beirut. Nobody's going to listen to him.
Before we get to the discussion about the drone attack on Netanyahu's vacation home, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's still very important for people to understand. I think there are a lot of people who confuse restraint with weakness. And there are a lot of folks that keep saying, when we keep hearing about Iran and all their missiles, we keep hearing about the power of Hezbollah. We know that, Israel tried this 20 years ago and going into Lebanon and got thumped unmercifully in the process. And so people keep saying, when are they going to respond? And so if you could explain from the perspective of a resistance movement, that the strategy of a resistance movement is different than the strategy employed by an oppressing force.
Yes, definitely. Right now, there's two things that we have to keep in mind. One is that the Zionist colony wants a direct war that includes the U.S. in it. And they're going to get it, by the way, where people shouldn't be in a hurry for the full regional war. It's coming anyways in the next few days or weeks before the American election happens. But in the meanwhile, Hezbollah as a defending force, in 1982, the Israelis took 4 days to reach from the south of Lebanon to Beirut. 4 days. In 2006, they were able to go into a few of the major valleys in the south and get to third line villages and bigger towns than villages, and they were repelled. But that took them 11 days to actually get to the third line. Today, they haven't been able to enter just a few meters into Lebanon without having to withdraw immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now we're 18 days into the attempted land invasion by the Israelis. Hezbollah released the numbers 2 days ago, so now these are a little bit out of date. But there's at least 20 Merkavas destroyed, tens of APCs, this is. They claim, between 50 to 100 dead Israeli soldiers. The numbers Israelis are releasing are lower, but just from counting, a Merkava has a 4-man crew, and 20 of them, you're clearly in the 100 number,
Mm-hmm.
if nothing else. And finally, we could see now the Israelis are so, defeated in their invasion that they stopped sending columns of tanks anymore. They're sending columns of drone-operated Bradleys, old 1980s and 90s tanks that have now installed on them a drone operation, and they're sending them ahead to try to get Hezbollah to expose their anti-tank units
Mm-hmm.
that have been destroying the invading forces. And so now we can see how defeated they are, and they will not be able to enter. And okay, so what are they going to do? Does Hezbollah need to invade North Palestine at this moment? No. It needs to actually destroy as much of the armaments that the Israelis have. So when they do something like invade North Palestine to liberate it, or invade the Golan Heights to liberate it, there will be no, a possibility for the Israelis to repel an attack.
You mentioned the war is coming within a few days, if not a few weeks, before the election. And I know the adage, and history shows us that the heightened sense of nationalism that develops in a country in a time of war, that people will tend to rally around the leader, again, based upon a sense of nationalism when the country finds itself being threatened. I don't think the calculus on this one is the same. I don't think the reaction is going to be the same. I'm trying to figure out why the Biden-Harris administration thinks that a conflict a week before an election is a good idea.
Yeah, I think, look, it's on the one hand, it's Netanyahu and the Zionists in the United States itself
Mm-hmm.
that want to make sure that no matter who is elected, that they will be shackled with having to continue a war that they can claim, also blame it on the president before them. You see, so this is a war starting will not change, I think, also any of the results of the elections. That's the other thing. And also, I want to say that there is a very big possibility that if there's a war starting a week before the elections, and there is dead American soldiers coming back in coffins, that Kamala Harris may suspend the election, Biden may suspend the election, and declare martial law, because there will be hundreds of thousands of people out in the street. And there will be 10 times the numbers that we saw for the genocide in Palestine. And it will be 10 times what we saw for Black Lives Matter. It will be historical numbers of people, and there will be riots. And there will be, it's not going to be it's going to make all the pro-Palestine demonstrations up until now look like picnics. And so this is part of the motivation that will drive somebody like Harris, who may think that she's going to lose the election, to suspend the election process. It also, you see, Netanyahu and the Zionists are playing to all the needs of both candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on the one hand, they want to play to Trump to make him look great. On the other hand, they also want to to make him look more pro-Zionist than Harris. And on the other hand, they're offering Harris the ability to suspend the elections if she lets this war happen. You see, it's a great ploy, and it's a win-win for the Zionists.
You mentioned Black Lives Matter, and there are those listening to this, those watching this, that would ask the question, as African Americans, why should we care? And it's incredibly unfortunate that now the internationalization of resistance has been lost on so many in the African American community. It's that sense of internationalization of the struggle that I believe expedited the assassination of Dr. King, as Dr. King and Malcolm came together in understanding this is an international struggle against imperialism. This is not simply a domestic fight within the United States. The government decided that Malcolm had to go. And so for those who don't really understand the significance of Yaya Sinwar, I remember NBC, I think it was about 12 years ago or so, that the apartment building that he was living in was bombed. And I remember seeing on NBC an interview with him where he was sitting on his couch amidst all of this rubble, and in the background it was a picture of George Floyd. So it wasn't 12 years ago, but elaborate on the connection. So for those particularly here saying, why do we care? The Palestinians obviously draw strength and care about our struggle. In fact, when I was in Tehran meeting with the cultural leader, a cultural advisor to the supreme leader, Mr. Bahmani, I asked him, why are you talking to me? Why do you care so much about Black history? And he said, because your struggle is our struggle. We are oppressed by the same forces. Laith Marouf.
Yeah, obviously, historically, there was a lot of connections between the Palestinian and African diaspora struggles, and, we remember the Black Panthers also going to Algeria and training in Palestinian camps there. And we, of course, look at how those moments in struggles in the United States, inside the U.S., that had internationalization into that struggle, not only the Black communities, but also the indigenous communities or the left. We remember that age between the 60s and late 70s, that included even stuff like the Weathermen and so on. These are moments.
The Weather Underground.
The Weather Underground.
Yes.
So these were actually the only moments that we can point to in modern American history where the internal struggles, were connected enough with the international and anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist struggles. And we're living, I believe, a moment of revival of all of that, because the empire just abandoned all the talk about human rights and international law, and now it's becoming clearer and clearer to all of humanity. And because also the struggle of the Palestinians now have become a domestic issue in the US, which means that the Arabic and Muslim communities are coming under repression that we haven't seen since the 60s and 70s in the US, of what happened to the Black organizers and so on there. And at any moment, when American soldiers come back in coffins, and we're seeing already the smoke signals of what's going to happen. Like, there's going to be arrests of dissident journalists, dissident organizers. There's going to be roundups. And once it's all out, we may even see, and I believe this is going to happen, internment camps for Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims in the United States. So this reality will touch everyone in the US. And it's actually essential that the Black communities, the Latino communities, the indigenous communities, all quote unquote left in the US, white communities, get ready for the repression that's gonna come. And that requires everybody to work together. That requires solidarity across these lines, and requires serious organizing in revolutionary manner. This is going to be unprecedented times as this war expands in West Asia, and as the repression expands inside the imperial domains.
About 10 days ago, I said on my Sputnik show, which is now defunct, as part of the repression that you're speaking to, I said, somebody needs to send a missile into Netanyahu's swimming pool. And I was very clear. I said, I'm not calling for the assassination of Benjamin Netanyahu, which is why I said swimming pool. I said, but a message needs to be sent. Somebody's needs to tap him on the shoulder and say, hey man, they can get you when they want you. So you might, because I don't think he's as committed to his cause as the Palestinians are to theirs. I don't think he's willing to give up his life for his people. So I said, and plus, calling for the assassination of a world leader is a war crime, and I'm not trying to get involved in that conversation. So anyway, I said, y'all need to just drop a missile in a swimming pool. Now we find out his vacation home was struck, and I think the vacation home was intentionally the target as opposed to his primary residence. Now I understand he's got a couple of places, and I'm sure bunkers where he can hide. But let's move now to the discussion about the most recent event, in terms of a drone striking the vacation home in Israel of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh, yes. So one thing to note is that his kids are out of the country. They're in Florida.
They're in Florida.
If anybody wants to. But if they see, look, the house that got hit in Caesarea, just outside Tel Aviv, was pinpoint hit. And the Israeli media claimed that Netanyahu and his ghoulish wife were there, that they ran in the last second to bunkers. The other thing is that the operation that Hezbollah conducted was so magnificent. They fired a volley of tens of missiles, and it was followed immediately by a wave of drones. And all of that, the wave of drones and the volley of missiles, were a distraction, and they were done like in layers, basically, to distract all the air defenses between the border of Lebanon all the way to Tel Aviv. And in the meanwhile, there was the actual drone that had the intention of reaching a target. And nobody saw it except when it was right over Tel Aviv. And they sent in helicopters. This was a hilarious video of a helicopter trying to look for this drone. And the drone just comes from behind it and flies by it. So everybody was like laughing at this. And there was even some memes here in Lebanon about saying, look, we are respectable people here. We are nice to our neighbors. We send silent drones, that don't wake up everybody on a Saturday morning. Like you guys send us these lawnmowers that are stuck on top of Beirut all day, like really bad neighbors, So, so it's
Wait a minute. What that gallows humor says something about the mindset of the Palestinians and the Lebanese, I believe, because here the image is, there are all these people running in the streets, running for cover every day. It's like Germany in World War II, Dresden, but that gallows humor to me speaks volumes about the mindset of the oppressed. Am I reading more into that than I should be?
No, you're not. You're definitely correct with that. And, this carries out in the greater Syria region in general, because it's been a stomping ground for empire after empire since time immemorial. So the region here of greater Syria, including Iraq, basically, has, kind of swings between this dark comedy and or very dark poetry, of crying on the ruins of your home and your love. So it's people's culture is determined by these historical moments, and changes how we view reality and how we construct our social behavior and our jokes and our music and our comedy and our poetry.
I was watching MSNBC Saturday morning, and they had some so-called security expert on. They were talking about the martyrdom of Yaya Sinwar, and the so-called expert was trying to equate. He was some type of international security expert. He was trying to equate the conflict with Hamas with the U.S. going after the drug cartels, and he was trying to put it in economic terms, and how they got rid of this particular drug lord, and then another one rises, and I'm listening to this, and the commentator isn't pushing back at all. The commentator is saying, wait, no, hold on, man, this is that to me signals the sickness of journalism in the United States, and how, folks, if you are equating this to pulling Noriega out of Panama, or assassinating, I can't remember now the name of any of these people, you really don't get
El
it.
Chapo.
You really don't get it. Much to your demise, Laith Marouf.
Yes, you see, look, the propaganda is so heavy now in the Zionist domains, the imperial domains, that at one point right now it is groupthink happening. And there's everybody that had any critical thinking has been rooted out, and so what you have is this groupthink, and it's becoming worse and worse, because your basic ideas that you're building all your analysis on are actually false.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're building more and more analysis over each other for a whole year. So now the cognitive dissonance and the disassociation from reality that we hear on Western media is unprecedented. Even on October 7th, it wasn't this bad, this stupid, this unbelievable. And I think this is now going to, of course, make it harder for decision making in the empire to envision correct tactical or strategic moves in the battle that they're pushing us into. And we see that already with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, or the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, or Yahya Sinwar. All of these are wrong decisions for somebody that wants to, let's say, win a battle. The only reason that you can't see that it's stupid to assassinate Sinwar is going to invigorate the resistance, or that it's stupid to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah because it's going to make the warriors on the front in Lebanon more vicious in their hope of killing your soldiers, is because you've now been blinded to reality and you're too into your own supremacy and detached from it by this groupthink.
I think it was Sun Tzu who said that the evil ruler will burn his own village to rule over the ashes, and that, I think, should be us. I think the word is ascribed to Netanyahu, to Joe Biden, to Kamala Harris, and also I think it's important for people to understand. And I just fell into that trap. This is not a matter of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. This is not administration policy. This is American foreign policy that goes well beyond the executive branch. I think I need to make that point, and your thoughts on that. And again, the point that Sun Tzu says the evil ruler will burn his own village to rule over the ashes, and that seems to be the mindset of the Zionist colony and Netanyahu as their prime minister.
Oh yes, and it's the policy of the United States. I mean, these countries that the U.S. wants to conquer, like Iran and Lebanon and Syria and so on, they are willing to burn 30,000 years of civilization and archaeology and history and everything to get to it. They're willing to poison the Fertile Crescent that fed the first humans and gave us writing and language.
The wheel. They gave us the wheel.
So they are basically they're willing to turn the Fertile Crescent into the infertile crescent, with everybody being nuked with depleted uranium in the area. And all so they can stay in control of it or get into control of it. And that's not something that a indigenous person does to their land. And it is not something that somebody that is not totally depraved and satanic almost does.
I want to quickly shift gears, and you're so gracious with your time. I truly appreciate it, but I don't think that we can end this conversation without talking about Yemen and without talking about Ansar Allah, who many here would know as the Houthis. I've been reading reports saying that the United States, along with the Zionist colony, they're now that they've martyred Yaya Sinwar, they're going after al-Houthi, the head of Ansar Allah. First of all, give me as I understand it, the translation of Ansar Allah, helpers of God. Is that the translation?
Yeah.
And explain what that means.
The allies of God.
Allies of God. Thank you. Because I think once you understand what that means as it relates to the prophet, may peace be upon him, then you get a different understanding of the commitment that these people have to their struggle.
Yes, the first Muslims that allied themselves with Muhammad before he even entered Medina, were the tribes of Yemen, and they were called the Ansar, those who are in solidarity and or allied with Muhammad. And they came into Medina with him in his arrival to it. So the Yemeni people view themselves as the first Muslims. They view themselves as the allies of the Prophet that he could depend on, and they carry that banner onwards. Okay, and so that's Ansarullah. The American, Australian, British B-2 bombers flying out of Australia bombed Yemen just before the assassination of of Yahya Sinwar. So many assassinations at this point. It's becoming ridiculous. And that shows you the stature of Yemen and its resistance to force the empire.
And people need to know, people need to realize Yemen is considered the poorest country on the planet.
Yep, the poorest country on the planet.
On the planet.
And requiring the most advanced weapons with the biggest bombs ever built by the United States, and still unable to defeat them, the US. And this is all on behalf of the cancerous Zionist colony. And you know what Yemen did? They immediately retaliated by hitting an American aircraft carrier, hitting it, and the aircraft carrier having to run back. Now, that was in the north of, they hit it in the north of the Indian Ocean. So Yemen is now the king of the high seas.
Was it in the Red Sea and then had to exit? Or
no, they can't enter the Red Sea.
Okay,
the American aircraft carriers have not entered the Red Sea since Yemen began its campaign. They're gone. They left. They hide either in the Mediterranean, even behind Cyprus, because they're scared of getting even closer, because Yemen is hitting Israel, so they can hit in the Eastern Mediterranean if they want to. And they're going all the way back and forth every time they try to, Yemen hits them in the North Indian Ocean. They can't enter even the Arabian Sea. So it's look, the United States is directly involved in this war. And I think the Washington Post even announced yesterday that the U.S. Special Forces were on the ground inside Gaza, providing information for the Israelis to conduct their air raids on Gaza. So this has been true for a whole year. It's also true in Yemen. So this is an American war. Since October 7th, this has been an American war. And the bombardment that is happening right now of Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine all at the same time, just mathematically, it's impossible that it's the Israeli Air Force conducting it by itself. They don't even have enough aircrafts to conduct such wide bombardments. And the U.S. is, and jets, British jets, Canadian jets, even probably Emirati and Jordanian jets are involved in these bombardments across the whole region.
And people also need to understand that it's at the estimates that I've read, it costs between $6 million to $8 million a day to operate a USS supercarrier like the Eisenhower or the Gerald Ford. $6 million a day to operate one of those things in the region. For what? And we have trouble funding infrastructure. Vice President Harris is talking about spending all this money for first-time home buyers and helping African American small businessmen and all this kind of stuff that where's the money going to come from? I don't hear anybody asking her that question on the campaign trail. Where's the money for the social safety net programs that she has now been forced to articulate? Where's that money going to come from when you sent $8 billion to Yemen, to Ukraine? You've sent $8.7 billion to the Zionist colony in Israel. You've spent almost $600 million to Taiwan in 1 week. In 1 week. That's almost $17 billion in just 1 week. You're spending $6 million a day to operate these super carriers. But we're not hearing that part of the analysis. Laith.
Yeah, I mean, they admitted last week that they claim that it cost them for a year now $20 billion to fund the war, the U.S. in Israel. But I think that number is definitely a lie.
Right.
It's probably closer to a couple of $1 trillion.
And let me just quickly to that point.
$1 trillion is 1,000 million. Okay.
And to that point,
million, sorry.
Because they're drawing their numbers simply from the defense budget, and they aren't factoring in the other government departments that, like the energy department, that contribute to the war effort. So it's not simply a matter of calling the Pentagon and saying, hey, how much money did you guys? No, you got to call the Department of Energy. You've got to call Homeland Security. There are a number of elements that contribute to this losing effort. I'm just
going to say one last thing about this money. The Qataris, after they lost with the Americans the war in Syria, the Qataris at that time admitted that they spent $2 trillion dumped into Syria to fund the Wahhabi death squads. And those were, small and medium range weapons. It's not like huge aircraft carriers and so forth. So you have to remember that also Yemen, for instance, shut down now 12, 14 MQ-9 drones and so on. And we have to remember that the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, the Bahrainis, all of them, all their dark money is funding this Israeli-American war also. This is probably a deal between Mohammed bin Salman and Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, to fund this war. And so, if it cost $2 trillion just for Qatar to fight in Syria, how much is it costing to fight this war on the highest tech in Palestine? I think the number is way much more than that, and much of it is being funded by these rulers in the Gulf countries.
As we get out, Laith, what are the 2 or 3 significant points that you want this audience to take away and truly understand about where we are right now?
Yes. First off, please visit FreePalestine.Video, donate, so we can continue bringing you the facts on the ground. Secondly, I would say that we are right now at a precipice of an end of an epoch in human history. This is how big this battle is now. We're seeing that the West will go as far as it can to maintain the Zionist colony and its hegemony. And that means that we are heading right now to an Israeli attack on Iran. Iran has said openly that it has given the all control of retaliation to the units on the ground. They don't have to go back to the central command and control to retaliate, and the retaliation will be immediate and instantaneous, and it will be devastating for the Zionist colony. So we will see probably immediately once that happens a invasion of North Palestine and the Syrian Golan Heights by Palestinian, Syrian, Iraqi, Lebanese fighters in the north of Palestine and the Golan Heights. And this will entail immediate American involvement and American deployment inside occupied Palestine to stop the total collapse of the Zionist colony. And then we're in full war between the Axis of Resistance and all of NATO. So in the next 2 weeks, we would be in the biggest war, and that we could probably call a world war without even the involvement of Russia and China. And the Western citizens will have a responsibility at that point to force their elite to stop us, this war before it becomes a nuclear war. And because once it's a nuclear war, it's an end of all of humanity. So we will see ourselves in having to make a decision, all of us. Do we want to be alive at the end of this year, or do we want to be dead and or living under a nuclear winter?
Laith Marouf, my dear brother, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. You are always so gracious and patient with me and some of my silly questions when I call you, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm praying always for you and for your family and for the people of Lebanon and the region, and stay safe, and look forward to having you back.
Thank you very much, Wilmer. See you soon.
Folks, I want to thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. Also, please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show. You can follow us on social media. You can find all the links below in the show description. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See you again next time. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a great one. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.